Welcome to Professor Game Podcast, where we interview successful practitioners of games, gamification, and game thinking, who brings the best of their experiences to get ideas, insights, and inspiration that help us in the process of getting the students to learn what we teach. And I'm Rob Alvarez. I teach and work at IE Business School in Madrid, where we create interactive and engaging learning materials. Want to know more? Go to professorgame.com/subscribe, start on our email list, and ask me anything. Engagers, today we have somebody I met relatively recently here in Madrid, and I'm very, very excited to have him on Professor Game. His name is Keith Ong. And Keith, the first question is, are you prepared to engage?
Totally. And I would like to say, Robert, right, it's been quite a while since we met, and I want to thank you for showing me a good time in Madrid. And it was really lovely to put a face to that name after all this time. And I'm really excited to get in touch with you again.
That's fantastic. Thanks to you for dropping by and to saying that you're around and be willing to have it was kind of quick, but not so quick. I really enjoyed the time we spent together here in Madrid. And thanks again for being in Professor Game. I hope you enjoy it, as well as I'm sure the engagers will enjoy this interview. So I wanted to make a quick intro of who Keith is. You can find a lot more in his page. Keith NG is the way you spell it. So Keith, as in the name Keith, and then ng.com. There you'll find his full intro. But very quickly, we can say that he was the co-founder of Gametize, along with a couple of friends, a digital gamification platform to motivate behaviors through challenges and reward, such as recruitment, learning and development, marketing, and community advocacy. Gametize won the funding in a reality TV show, Angel's Gate, the People's Vote in IBM's Asean Smartcamp in 2013, and most recently SBR's 2015 20 hottest startups in Singapore. So that sounds very, very exciting. The platform is powering fun for over 300,000 users with 10 million challenge completions. Keith was nominated as one of the most influential people in gamification globally by Gamification Summit in 2014, as well as a top 100 gamification innovator consultant by Sparkah. I'm not sure if I pronounced that correctly. Is there anything important that you think I've missed from this intro, Keith?
No, I think that's more than enough, right? My face is turning red. These are just really off the deck, really trying to get people to, in this part of the world, right? This is the kind of description that really can help evangelize the concept of gamification, right? Believe it or not, right? It's still a relatively new concept. I still get people asking me whether did I invent this word over here.
That's fantastic. That's phenomenal. And again, you have a pretty long experience. And again, if you want to know more, there's a lot more. He's turning red, but there's a lot more things that we could say about Keith. But we want to also limit it to a quick intro. So Keith, can you tell us what a regular day with you would look like? Or if there's not such a thing as a regular day, maybe a regular week. How does that day or week look like? What are you doing regularly?
Well, I work 9 to 5, 9 p.m. to 5 a.m., right, in the Singapore time zone. And a lot of my time is really spent in thinking about what are the different use cases our gamification platform can serve. And on a day-to-day basis, we still get a lot of write-ins asking, can your solution help me with this use case? And some of the interesting use cases we have seen, one of them is a recycling project all the way in Trinidad and Tobago. And we had a student writing into me, right? She's 18 years old. She's asking me how much it costs. And she's saying that she doesn't have much money. And I told her that, you know what, I'll be happy to sponsor. Please just get in touch with me. On other days, right, we have primary school teachers writing to us saying that they would like to use our solution to make it more interesting for the kids to learn their English. They do not have money. And we are happy to support projects like that. We have also clients from the corporate world, and every day, right, they are trying to figure out, right, how can we make this more than just fun? At the end of the day, we need to ensure that our solution actually solves a real problem and fulfill a real business objective for them. And I am a software engineer by training, so a lot of times we'll be thinking about how can we do integrations with their existing solutions. We'll be debating about, all right, can we create an Angry Birds or can we create a Candy Crush for this particular use case? And I will have to debate with them, right? This is not, I'm not sure whether how this can help you solve your problem, and can we look at other ways and can we look at other solutions? So you can see that my day really looks like a bowl of salad where there's a lot of things jumbled up on a daily basis. I'll be talking to my teammates on a daily basis, trying to think about new features, how do we move our solution to become much more than just fun, right? So it's a very exciting like a period of 10 years for my last gamification lifetime career. And it's been the same excitement every single day.
But it still sounds very exciting, I have to say, talking to different projects, seeing different things every day. And you said you're a software engineer, but as well, I know from our chats that you did something around arts. So you know a lot about arts as well, which is a very interesting mix, especially for somebody who is into gamification. Is that right, Keith?
Yeah, I did a brief like a stint in Belgium. I did my exchange Erasmus program in Leuven, and I was always doing arts when I was younger due to life changes and due to life practicality, right? I became a software engineer, and I believe that art is, gamification is a kind of art form, really, right? It's a really nice like balance and mixture of arts and science, and also in certain forms, you also need to put in the different engineering methodologies inside as well. So I am a fan of anything that can make my work a lot easier, right? So arts still is a very big part of my work.
I think we all are. But now, Keith, I wanted to move into one of our favorite parts of this interview, and it's when our guests talk about what we would call their favorite fail or first attempt in learning. There's many experiences in which things kind of go south, not exactly as we were expecting. And then, of course, we gain a lot of insights, or there's always a story of comeback or similar. So what would you say is a story of that? Of course, I know you work with a lot of clients, and there's many NDAs involved. So if you can't really reveal something very precisely. But what's a story that we can learn from, something interesting that happened to you, which didn't go well, but then what did you learn from it? How did you come back from it? Can you give us that story, Keith?
Yeah. In fact, I would up the deal. I'll give you 3 stories.
Wow.
And the very first story was actually our very first gamification product back in 2008. And we created this game. It is really a market, it's kind of like a virtual stock market game where you can buy shares of human beings. So, Rob, if you were in the game, right, I will be able to buy shares of you, and you have a price that goes up and down. And likewise, in the game, we are able to buy shares of football players, buy shares of predictions happening around the world, and these are all virtual money. And our idea of that was actually really to gather market sentiments and data and crowdsourcing for opinions in a fun and interactive manner. And at the same time, we want to make it fun for people to bring their friends. That's why we allowed human beings to be listed as a stock index. And what happened was we got into the Facebook Fund top 50 applications around around the world, and we were one of the poster boys in Singapore for this particular startup that we were developing. But that project totally blows, right? We couldn't make money out from that. We couldn't. Most of our users are very, very niche users. They were very good at the stock market and everything else, but it was a very small pool of users. And the learning point from this particular game was that it's all about simplicity. End of the day, right? You have to make something really fun, but you have to make it really simple for the regular Joe or Jane to be able to provide you with any kind of data. And our game was really way too complicated. And so that was lesson number 1. Lesson number 2, we later pivoted to something that what we thought to be much more simpler. So it became a dating game where people could buy shares of each other. To a certain extent, it was really creepy. Because like, Rob, if I were to buy shares in you, right, I'll be able to unlock more photos of you, right? Which obviously we would have uploaded onto the platform. And when I have enough shares of you, I'll be able to actually unlock the instant messaging feature, So it's creepy, and but we had a lot of users. We had maybe like a 20,000 users, right, in a span of just like a couple of months. And then we realized something, right? We were not solving any problems. And along the way, we realized that maybe it's time to just do something else and do something more impactful, do something that can really make a change to a person's life other than just helping with the dating life. And the third story that
dating life can be very important as well.
I agree, right? I think Tinder and OkCupid, they does a much better job than what we did back then. But we also did not. We lost the motivation to continue working on the game, and because we realized that we were not doing anything meaningful at all. Right? There was just nothing to motivate us to continue working on the game. So what happens along the line was that we stumbled upon the idea of creating a more generic gamification platform. We realized that it would be really tiring if we had to create every single game on our own. Why don't we create a platform that enables everyone to create their own game?
Keith, I just want to make a quick pause because I think that is going to be a big challenge and a beautiful solution that you created, something that you're proud of. Is that the case? Are we going now for that story?
Yeah, I was going to...
Beautiful. I just a super quick recap, because there's two main learnings that you got from that two-part story that you had on your first projects, and I think they are very, very powerful and very valuable. The first one is you realize that you were designing for a very specific type of user when your target market was not a specific type of user. So you were trying to target many people, many different profiles, and you were actually targeting just one, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but if you're trying to target the general public, maybe it's not such a good thing.
Yeah, it's just way too difficult for most people.
Yeah, absolutely. And the second one is that you created and the application evolved and it turned into something which didn't really have, or you felt it didn't have an objective. So those are two key learnings that I think we've talked about before, which are one, getting to know who your players are going to be, and the other one is having very clear what you want to obtain from the use of gamification in whatever system, application, board game, whatever it is you're doing. Have it very, very, very clear. And these are lessons learned that I'm sure Keith will take into the future. So let's continue with your fantastic story, because I think I know where this is leading us to, which is very exciting.
Okay, so the third story really was how we evolved to becoming a gamification platform, and we decided to empower people to create their own games, and we created a solution where everyone can create their own challenges and everyone can challenge one another. And then we realized that the problem with that approach is that it gets too chaotic, and nobody else was really interested to do each other's challenge, right? So we realized that you need to be able to curate your game to make sure that you actually are able to interest your audience. Otherwise, when the audience comes into your game, they realize that there's too much content, right? They just get lost. They just get drowned in the sea of chaos. So along the way in the past 10 years, right, we learned a lot of lessons, and we thought that we could be a marketing solution. It turns out that actually the HR market is the one that requires our solution the most. They find that our solution can really solve a real pain point for them in employee engagement. They find that our solution can help them with the learning disengagement as well. So there we are today, right? This is the three main lessons that I would like to share. Right, find the right audience, right? Make sure that you don't confuse your users with too much complexity in the game and too much content in your project as well.
That is absolutely fantastic. I think the level of complexity is very related as well to what are you creating, why are you creating it, what's your objective, etc. So those are key learnings that we have to keep in mind, engagers, whenever we are creating solutions. Keep in mind all those three things always, because there's many methodologies that are out there and that can be used to keep these in mind. But whatever it is that you're going to use for your designs, for your creations, keep them in mind, consider them, and use them. Use these whatever processes that you're going to use. And that leads us beautifully into the next question, Keith, which is if you have any sort of process. When somebody calls in and says, Keith, can you help me with this problem that I have using your platform or using gamification in general? What process do you follow? What are the steps that you take to lead that person into a final solution?
Great. So I think we shared briefly before the call that Kirsten actually came to Singapore, right? Kirsten from PandaQuest, and we were on the same panel together, and we actually had the same exact question, right? What truly makes a good gamification campaign, right? What are the processes that can lead to that? And both of us have similar answers, right? Whatever solves your problem is the right gamification solution. And as simple as it sounds, right? The very first step of the whole process is really identifying what is the problem statement. You'll be so surprised that a lot of gamification projects, right, does not begin with that objective. They begin off with the objective, let's make something more fun. Let's make something more exciting, right? But if you don't identify exactly what is the problem that you're trying to solve, right, it goes south from there. And the second step of this whole process is to find out what are the small little problems that actually leads to this problem as well. So if you were to draw the whole fishbone diagram, you can actually kind of like outline what are the different steps, what are the different pain points that leads to this major pain point, and your gamification campaign or project is actually revolving around changing the behaviors that can solve all these small little problem statements, which will lead to solving the main overarching problem as well. So that's the very first step, and you'll be amazed that out of 10 clients I speak to, 9 would not be able to tell me exactly the problem statement. And so we actually would spend and I had to convince them, I had to be very respectful and tell them that, look, John, right? Just a very typical Singaporean name, John. And this is not, with all due respect, right? You're not telling me exactly why are we here? What problem are we trying to solve? And sometimes they get defensive. They will say, oh, Keith, right, we don't really have a problem. So part of my job really is to make them really uncomfortable and to make them really honest with themselves. What do you want to solve with this? And a lot of times, after much coaching, they will be able to share exactly what's bothering them. It takes a while. And once we get through this step, right, everything else is much easier until we go through the very first step is to identify the problem, and then we decide on what are the target objectives, right? And that's a typical consulting framework, right? You ask the client, what do you want to achieve? What are the kind of metrics you want to get to? The third step is something that I am not sure whether other gamification specialists are working on. But what we do a lot is we ask them, what kind of emotions do you want your users to be saying when they are using this game, or when they're using the application, or they are interacting with the website? Because when we get to the emotion aspect, we can design a campaign backwards to try to reach that emotion. So the emotion could be something like, I feel recognized by the company, and I want to come back here every day because it makes me feel important. Or another emotion could be, right, I am going to be competitive. I'm going to beat everyone else in this game. The third kind of emotions could be, I am proud to be in this company because of the values that they have shared with me in this game. So you can see that once you work on the emotion aspects, right, the natural step is to ask the questions, right? What kind of behaviors you want the users to be doing offline and online? And one thing I really believe about gamification is that you can do a lot of things online, right? You can try to incentivize behaviors for online and digital, but gamification actually has the capability and potentials to engage you beyond just online activities. Say, for example, I want you to go have lunch with Roberto, right? And do a reflection summary, take a selfie, put it on the application, put it on the game, and you get points for that. When people vote on you, you get points on that. But what's really important over here is that the activities just not just happen in the online world or the virtual world. It happens in the offline world as well. And I'm a huge fan of offline engagement as well, right? I think it's equally as important as online engagement. All right, so once we clear up the emotion and behaviors target stage, right? Of course, the fourth step will be about trying to find out what are these psychographics of these players. And I can't emphasize enough that right after the problem statement stage, this is definitely going to be a very, very critical step, because that's when a lot of projects can fail, right? We so often have clients telling us that they want to target everyone in the company, right? We heard this again and again. We asked them, can you tell me who are you exactly trying to target? And they will say, no one must be left behind, right? Now, the problem is that once you build a game for everybody, you build a game for nobody. So, but at the same time, right, we also recognize that as an enterprise client, they want to make sure that their CVs or their performance appraisal looks good because they have created maximum impact on every employee in the company. But that's when we really have to be very honest with our clients and tell them that, look, John, this is probably not going to fly, right? We have seen this happen before. We try to respect our clients' demands to create a game for everybody. In the end, the game activities were pathetic, right? We spent so much time and efforts, but in the end, right, nobody could feel like they're part of this community. So just ensure that you are able to do a profiling, trying to understand exactly what motivates these users. And sometimes it's perfectly fine to target just 10% of the company, right? Because this 10% can create like a 90% impact more than everybody else. And it's perfectly fine to just like work on this 10% of the users. And the fifth steps, right? That's when all the gamification design comes in, right? You try to work on narratives, you try to work on the mechanics, and that's when we do a lot of testing. And this is just a shameless plug, right? With the Gametize platform, you can actually like create a game in just like under 10 minutes. And we are a huge fan of automation. We are a huge fan of creating quick and dirty MVPs, minimum viable products, because we absolutely believe in testing, right? There's no game that can be perfect, but there's a game that can be perfectly tested again and again. So once you do the testing, you realize that maybe some people are able to do points bombing over here. Some players are able to do some cheating over here, right? And sometimes cheating is part of the fun. There's perfectly nothing wrong with people cheating if the game objective or the business problems is still being solved. So we go through this stage, and typically within a space of like 1 month, right, we'll have like 4 to 5 different versions of the gamification campaign, right, just for A/B testing. And that is entirely possible because we are actually able to involve our clients in creating the games themselves. And what's really interesting sometimes is we actually, when we interview the focus users, some clients will bring about 4 to 5 focus users. And these focus users are actually the game designers themselves. And that's fantastic because you're actually having people creating the games for themselves to play, a game for themselves, for their friends to play as well. So that's actually a really, really powerful concept. So with that, sorry, this is a very long answer to a very short question, but we usually call this the 5D process. And it's not very different from what other gamification specialists are already doing. And we got inspired by Kevin Webach's gamification course on Coursera. He has this like 7 steps process, right? We cut down to 5 steps, right? And we found this to be the same framework they've been using for the past 7 years.
That is absolutely fantastic. Thank you for such a detailed explanation. I don't apologize at all because as much detail as we get, it's more value that the engagers are getting and that they're able to apply as well in their own daily practice.
Fantastic.
Just a quick break before we continue. Are you enjoying this podcast? If you're listening through a podcasting app, please subscribe and rate us on the app. This will be of great help to reach more engagers so we can change the world together through gamification.
So Keith, now we're going to move into this sort of the second part of this interview where we go for the maybe not rapid fire or kind of rapid fire, but they're like quicker answers. They're not so much a story or a whole detailed process as we were just talking about before, but they're rather more questions that come at the top of your mind maybe. And the first one would be is if there's any best practice or anything that we can do or any platform that we can use, for example, that you think is sort of a best practice. Like if you do gamification and you use this or you do these kinds of things or you use this strategy or whatever, it will always help your gamification design.
Great. Obviously, right, I think there's this like really exceptional platform that everyone should be testing out. It's free to use. It's called Gametize.com. It's a really simple to use platform. But a lot of times when we get our clients or partners or friends to use Gametize.com, we normally tell them to start off with pen and paper, right? A lot of people just forget these tools. This is a really simple tool. If not pen and paper, something called Google Slides, right? Just to outline what we call a gamification concept document or game design document, right? Outline the kind of like objective you want to hit, right? Outline the kind of players, the kind of mechanics. And using Google Slides is fantastic because it's very collaborative in nature, right? Everyone can go in to add in their own visuals. There are lots of open source of image, like royalty-free images. Pixabay is a great inspiration, right? It's a great place to get really nice photos, right? That you don't have to pay for. At certain time, you don't even have to do accreditations, right? It's a fantastic resource that we always recommend our friends to look at. If you're looking for quick and dirty design tools, right? I would recommend something called canva.com,
Yes.
right? Within like minutes, you're able to create really beautiful like graphics. End of the day, game design is not just all about visuals, but I think it represents a huge part of the whole experience. The color scheme, the narrative, the design, the illustrations. My suggestion is not to spend too much time working on all these things. There are a lot of tools out there that can help you with these different types of designing experience. I would also recommend looking at different types of frameworks. Of course, there's Autolysis, and then there's Andrea's player types framework. And these are all widely available in the internet. They are very easy to look at, and they're very easy to use. There are tons of resources out there for you to learn about gamification, starting from professorgame.com.
Thank you.
Lots of content, right? Yeah, and I think gamification specialists are still going around the world, right, doing evangelizing, talking about the giving talks for free. Just get onto these workshops. I always appreciate people coming to me and stealing me for the next 5 minutes, just brainstorming with me, like what can his or her gamification campaign improve on, and we are always happy to share our inputs. So these are all like fantastic resources that you can tap on.
Beautiful. So we have Gametize.com definitely as a something that we could use in our gamification projects. Creating something like with a pen and paper, or even the digital things like Google Sheets, which includes things like Pixabay and others. And then of course using things that are existing out there already. Things like you mentioned Autolysis, you mentioned Andrzej Marchewski's Hexad. You mentioned before also Kevin Warbach's course on Coursera. I'm not sure how it's working right now, but I think you can still access all the contents for free. And of course, going to talks, of course, meeting Keith anywhere. He's very, very willing. I can testify to that. He's willing to talk about these things if you want to. He's also willing to have fun if you want to have fun as well. He's a very, very open and willing person in that sense. So I would definitely recommend, if you have any chance at listening or talking to Keith at some point, I will tell you, go for it as quick as you can.
Yay.
So the next question is, talking about fun again, is what would you say is your favorite game?
Oh, Pac-Man.
Wow.
Without hesitation. It's the best game for me ever. And the reason why it is such a fantastic game for me is because there's only really one thing to do, which is just to move, to choose the directions you want to move at, right? Up, down, left, right. There's absolutely nothing else you have to do other than moving up, down, left, right. And the Pac-Man moves on its own. It's actually a really strategic game. It looks simple enough, but the objective of the game is to maximize your killing of the monsters as much as you can, right? And it just gets harder and harder in every stage. But it is such an easy game. The sound is so mesmerizing. I love the music. I have like 4 or 5 different Pac-Man t-shirts, and one of them I actually got it from Madrid, from Primark.
I think we have the same one then.
Oh, we have the same one, I think, right? And actually, you are the one who told me about Primark. So I went back the second day to get a T-shirt. I should take a picture for you. So I'm in love with Pac-Man. I think it's a great game. It's a really simple game, great illustrations. Right? It's a game that will live for centuries.
I'm sure it will. Actually, when I went to Gamification Europe, I stayed at a hotel in Amsterdam. So I'm gonna make a quick plug for them because I think I had an amazing experience there. It's called the Arcade Hotel. So you get in, and the first thing that you see is an arcade game of Pac-Man. So that's the first thing that you see when you get into the hotel. I could spend like the whole episode just talking about the hotel, which is awesome. But if you want to look it up, you can just find it on the internet and see many of the amazing things that they have. So if you're going to Amsterdam, my experience was very good. I mean, as far as hotel, they're a normal hotel, but the rest, that sort of additional layer of games is pretty awesome.
I would love to get to the hotel, right? I need to get a link from you.
Yes, in fact, many of the other attendees were asking me how did I find out about it, and I have to say that it was thanks to Bart Hoofen. He told me about it. I was further away than the rest of the people, but I was happy to get on a bus and spend 15 minutes on a bus to get to the conference, as long as I was staying my nights there and having access to the game room and others. So
Wow.
it was a very very nice experience.
Sounds like Amsterdam.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So the next thing, Keith, is that we would like to know if there's any person or any person that you would like to listen to in an interview like this one here in Professor Game.
So my answer would be you. I would love to interview you at some point. I told you before the call that, I'm going to surprise you. So the person that I would really love to be interviewed is actually Roberto, yourself, right? I think you have a great mixture of discipline. And when we met in Madrid, you were sharing about how you got into the space because, it's not necessarily like a commercial initiative at this point of time. But I saw what you have been doing. I think this must have been the 50 or 60s podcast, right? There's been so much podcast
we're in the 60s
doing.
right now, I think.
Yeah, and there's so much work to do. And I am amazed at how professional that you're running this whole thing. And some of the questions are fantastic. I enjoy answering them. But I would love to hear the answer from you. Roberto, what's your favorite game? Tell us about it.
I think we will do something like that in the future. We have to figure out how it'll work. But I think it could be something exciting. It's actually a really interesting idea. And I don't want to be too excited because it could sound like an ego thing, but it's I do think it could be fun, which is the main thing.
It doesn't sound narcissistic if it's suggested by your interviewee. So I'll do the interview next time. I'll volunteer.
I have to say, and this actually helps because you've also talked about him as well. The first time that I heard this, and the only time I've heard it before, was from Richard Bartle. So you can say that you're in the same category in that sense as Richard.
Really?
Yes.
I am a huge fan of him.
Yes, he's super nice. He's super interesting. His experience is amazing. I'm only surprised that he's not like a lot more famous in general. I think we know him in the gamification world, but I think he deserves like a lot more exposure in that sense. But I've done my share. I hope I can do some more. But he's a lot of fun. I mean, I don't know how old he is. He's certainly not super young. But you can see he's still energetic, super interesting, into like geeky, fun stuff. I mean, I really, really enjoyed that interview as well.
I had a chance to ask him one question over the webinar, right? During the Gabe Zickerman's webinar, and I was so happy that he took my question. And the question was that why would that 1% of the players matter to a gamification designer or game designer, right? And he had a really good answer, which I still throw out as a fun fact to every workshop I go to. He talks about how that 1% of the gamer who are the killers actually keeps the 80% of the socializers engaged. Without that 1% of the killer, the 80% of the socializers may not be able to band together or form a community, right?
Against
so I thought
the
that
killers.
Yes, against that. So that 1% of the killer is a very, very important 1%.
There you go. That's super interesting. I haven't heard that interview, but I think I should.
No, you wouldn't have heard that because it was a question that was so random, right? I don't think he was focusing on that question a lot, but I thought this was actually a very fascinating answer.
Yes, definitely. Keith, is there any book that you would recommend to the engagers reading, and why would it be that book?
Flow Theory. Again,
Theory.
Hands down. Yeah, hands down, right. Flow Theory is not a gamification book, right? But gamification has a huge, that's a huge part of motivation and positive psychology. And if you think about it, right, flow theory covers a lot about what keeps people motivated, right? How do you get people in the flow mode? And it talks about why, constant feedback is extremely important to help someone grow, and what's the difference between enjoyment and pleasure. I use a lot of Csikszentmihalyi, Professor Csikszentmihalyi's materials, and I credit him a lot on my workshops. I find that his book and his material has a huge impact in how I do my gamification designs, and I subscribe to that theory, flow theory, a lot, and I recommend that it's available on Audible as an audiobook. I think he's the actual person narrating the book himself. very mesmerizing mesmerizing voice. But he's also, I would recommend to get the book. It's a fantastic book.
It sounds very, very good. I haven't read it. I've been into the theory of flow many times, but I haven't read the actual book. I definitely have to put in my to-do list. I'm having a rough time with reading right now. These have been crazy busy times, but I definitely have to put that one in my
Go with the audiobook. Yeah, you can get onto Audible, get on the trial version, and they will give you like credits immediately. And the very first book that you should be getting on the credit is Flow Theory.
Yes. So Keith, what would you say is your superpower when you're creating gamification or in the gamification world?
So there's a lot of specialists, and you see, I struggle to use the word guru. I think.
Yeah, I mean, you're not the first one. I remember. I think it was Ann Coppins who told me, like, when they use the word guru, I imagine like this guy in a huge tunic with a long beard, and I don't think I'm that guy, anyways. and again, Ann Coppins would be definitely identified easily as one of the gurus, but of course, the word has like certain implications that are like weird sometimes for some people.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up Ann Coppins. I'm a huge fan of her, and she's somebody that I have a lot of respect for, because she doesn't come from the game design angle, right? She spent a lot of time in Accenture. She brings a lot about all this corporate experience, trying to marry gamification and making it relevant for the business or the corporate world. She's incredibly nice, right? She when you met her, right, she's really happy to share.
Absolutely.
And I think I struggle with the word guru really because I feel that gamification is still really in the infancy stage. Not a lot of people. I don't think anyone can really be a guru at this point of time. You see, I even struggle to use the word expert, because I think there's so much to learn about gamification as of today. I'm rather comfortable using the word specialist, because I think this is something that I am, this is something that you are, and we are all working together as a community, right? There's no hierarchy in this community. All of us are still learning about the space. And on the topic about my superpower, I have been in this like space even before I knew about the word gamification. And the funny thing is that I used to tell people that I'm in the business of hybridization of reality and gaming before I knew about. So thank God for this word.
It made it simpler to say, at least.
Yeah, it's not the best word, but you get the idea. And I realized that my niche really is in translation. And when I mean translation, I'm fantastic at trying to making it relevant to the corporate world as well. If you were to tell them that you're going to make your employees have more fun in work, right, that's not going to fly. Rather, what I'm interested in is how can we make it relevant to solve a business problem? And secondly, how can we make the user experience a lot easier? And sometimes these kind of things can be done with the various enterprise integrations of software. Say, for example, a good gamification platform is not just supposed to be easy to use, but the best gamification experience is that when the users don't have to do anything. And that basically means that if you're able to do certain kind of integrations, say, for example, SAP integrating with Gametize, or it could be Sparkah, which is a very heavy enterprise-grade learning management system, and making the integration experience a lot easier. And people will be earning points, people will be getting recognition for doing their sharing or their learning. I would say that would be my superpower, right? I am obsessed with integration. I'm obsessed with cutting down the number of steps for users to do. I believe the best game would be one where the player doesn't have to do anything at all. He just carries on with his regular life by getting a lot of constant, instant feedback. So that would be it.
It makes a lot of sense. It's a very interesting superpower, especially when you're working with the corporate world, and even when you're doing some of your sort of pro bono that you mentioned before. It's a superpower as well, because you're able to help them understand what's the value that this is bringing to their world. And
exactly,
of course, to our engagers as well, you're able to convey all of that power that we've been talking about in gamification. But Keith, our time is just about to run up, so I would like to know if you have any final piece of advice for the engagers. let us know how we can find you in the world of the internet, or even in the world if you want. And then we'll say it's game over.
Great. So please hit me up at keizng.com. You'll be able to find some on my social media handle over there. Right. It's the same handle for my Instagram. In fact, that's how me and Roberto have been communicating over Instagram.
Yes, indeed.
Not a common way for two males to be communicating, but we did exactly that. And I am also happy to connect with you through LinkedIn as well. You'll be able to find me by typing in KEIZNG. And I just want to have some quick advice for everyone who has trying to find ways to learn about gamification. I think there are so many tools out there. Sometimes it can get really confusing and chaotic. The best way to do this sometimes is to do a prototype on your pen and paper. We are in the digital world, but start off small with baby steps, right? Get a couple of friends or colleagues and share with them the idea and concepts, right? Get people excited, right? In fact, gamification is also about advocacy as well. It's about motivating people to get excited with a cause, right? So starting off with pen and paper, there's nothing wrong with that. Do baby steps, have lots of conversations, and enjoy the process. And that's really important. Although you are creating fun for others, don't forget to create fun for yourself.
Fantastic. That is great advice. Thank you very much, Keith, for spending time with us and the engagers today. However...
Thank you, Roberto. Well, thank you very much as well. I had a good time.
Thank you for the thank you, and thank you absolutely. And now it's time to say that it's game over.
Hey Engagers, thank you for listening to Professor Game Podcast. How are you listening to this podcast? If it's through a podcasting app, have you subscribed and rated this podcast? Please do so. That way we can reach more Engagers like yourself to achieve our mission of making learning amazing. And if you want the instructions, you can just go to professorgame.com/iTunes. And before you go on to your next mission, would you like a sneak peek into what happened at Gamification Europe 2018? Then you have to listen to the episode next week. So go ahead and subscribe using your favorite podcast app and listen to the next episode of Professor Game. See you there!